Gael wants to make Ireland the best country in Europe to be a child. Listen to that again. Gael wants to make Ireland the best country in Europe to be a child. Gael have posted this multiple times on Twitter over the past week or so, and only a couple of times that I could see on their Facebook and Instagram pages. I'm a millennial, so I'm not on TikTok, but it doesn't seem like Gael bothered to post it there, despite their new energy and desire to be seen as hip. But don't worry, Simon Harris did. Buckle up, folks, because this one is going to be an angry one. Gael wants to make Ireland the best country in Europe to be a child. Let that sink in for a moment. Gael, the party who have been in power for 13 years, wants to make Ireland the best country in Europe to be a child, and have posted that goal multiple times across multiple platforms. I have some questions. Firstly, who the f*** do they think they are? Are they f***ing serious? Is this some sort of sick joke to them? When I saw this post for the first time, I am genuinely surprised that I managed to retweet it with coherent sentences, considering just how much my blood was boiling and how much fire I was spitting. Thankfully, my husband was on hand to distract me and calm me down with memes and pictures of cats to avoid a rage-induced injury. I joke to try to cut through my anger. It's not working. The best country in Europe to be a child. Here's what Gael can do with that absolute bullshit. They can right off. Keep f***ing off, and when they think they've f***ed off enough, they can f*** off some more. How f***ing dare they say those words with a straight face? How dare they? I'm choking on my own rage so much that it's hard to organise my thoughts. If you only get your news from RTE, you might not understand why I'm so angry. After all, those tweets and posts were about encouraging people to share their views in their early years education and childcare consultation. Seems innocent enough, doesn't it? But it's not. They pick those words, knowing the pain and suffering that so many children in this country are going through right now, and who they've collectively turned their backs on. From those vulnerable children who have gone missing from Tusla, to those children being groomed and abused under their watch, to those increasing numbers of children who are living in deprivation, to the ever-increasing numbers of homeless children, to those children with additional needs being left to rot on never-ending waiting lists for the care and supports they need, to those children with additional needs who are denied school places, and to those children who are living in agony, waiting on spinal surgeries that may never come, while their families are forced helplessly to watch their children suffer, and many more besides. Best country in Europe for kids, my ass. Fine Gael and anyone who supports them, and Fianna Fáil and the Greens for that matter too. They have enabled this and are just as complicit, but Fine Gael. They are a stain, a parasite on our country, and they have the absolute brass neck, the gall, the lack of any shame or conscience to post absolutely insulting bullshit like that across social media, while untold numbers of children suffer year on year due to their callous indifference. Not incompetence as they'd like you to believe, but absolute indifference to the suffering of one of the most vulnerable groups in our society. They just don't care. They have been told by parents and experts in those fields how to fix the issues. They've had 13 years and they've done nothing but watch the situation deteriorate for countless children and their families, all while milking the taxpayer for their overpriced salaries. Them. And I'd like to take this opportunity to remind everyone about how 3 years in a row now, our country has run a budget surplus in excess of €8 billion. And we now have that Apple tax that the government spent €10 million of our money fighting against receiving. I wouldn't trust this government to organise a piss-up in a brewery, and they've shown time and time again that they cannot be trusted with the public purse, quite clearly evidenced by the increasing numbers of children experiencing hardship. Now, as I mentioned, Fianna Fáil, the Green Party and Labour, can't forget Labour, have all had a hand in this downward slide to a country, or rather a government, that is A-OK with leaving children with their spines crushing their lungs so they struggle to breathe. But for Fine Gael to post that sentence, not once, but multiple times across multiple platforms, is nothing short of breathtaking arrogance. The party told you to to reject the evidence of your eyes and your ears. It was their final, most essential command. George Orwell's 1984 is supposed to be a cautionary tale, and yet here we are with Simon Harris and Fine Gael attempting to use it as an instruction manual. They want you to forget and ignore the evidence, the tangible evidence we have surrounding just how little this government thinks about children. They want you to forget all that and swallow the lie that they want to make Ireland the best country in Europe to be a child. It's utterly shameless and beyond sickening. On Taoiseach, Simon Harris and his party would like you to forget about those children for whom our government routinely ignore. He'd like you to forget that his party have engineered the housing market to the profit-driven catastrophe it is, one that is pushing more and more children into homelessness and deprivation. He'd like you to forget that it was he and he alone who promised children that they would not wait more than 4 months for a scoliosis procedure, and he'd very much like for you to forget that it was he who signed off on the blank cheque black hole that is the National Children's Hospital, which now won't be open until 2026 at the very earliest, and has not one of 3,000 rooms finished to standard. Let's start with his broken promise to children.
Yeah, and look, I said I was ashamed, and I saw again some media commentary saying, oh, sure, we don't need the minister to say he's ashamed, we need him to do something, and that's right, and I'm going to tell you what I'm doing, but we do also need a minister who doesn't just trot out lines to try and defend the indefensible. That situation is indefensible. We're going to fix it. We're going to make sure by the end of this year no child waits longer in this country for a scoliosis procedure than 4 months. We're going to get this fixed, and it's an absolute priority. No child will wait longer than 4 months.
And here's what he said in the Dáil this past week when opposition and Sinn Féin leader Mary McDonald questioned what he was going to do for children like Harvey Sherratt, the 8-year-old boy whose spine is now at 110 degrees and crushing his lungs, who desperately needs surgery, whose parents have had to go public with their suffering in an attempt to shame Soundbite Simon and his band of uncaring charlatans into helping their child, who was inexplicably and silently taken off the scoliosis surgery list. I cannot even begin to imagine what his family go through on a daily basis. It honestly just breaks my heart. And Simon Harris's response to Mary McDonald just boils my blood. This was his response while Harvey's parents were present in the Dáil, by the way. This is how utterly despicable this man and his government are. Have a listen.
These children need their operations. All you've offered is review after review after review with no results or improvements. Parents are stonewalled again and again, and it's simply not good enough. These children wait and wait because of government failures, and it is your job to fix it. As Taoiseach, the buck stops with you. So today, I would like you to tell Harvey's parents and the parents of all of the other children when they will finally get their operations.
Thank you, Deputy McDonald. Taoiseach, please.
Well, thanks very much, Ceann Comhairle, and I want to thank Deputy McDonald for raising this important issue. And may I say at the outset of my answer, Ceann Comhairle, as you've said to us before in this House, very conscious of discussing clinical details, or indeed those of us discussing them that are not clinicians. And I say that in a general sense, but I say it in an important sense, because Deputy McDonald asks me to provide operations when, of course, the decision to operate or not will always be a clinical matter. And I'm sure that's a view she'd share. Politicians don't order operations. Clinicians decide when it's safe to operate. And I say that to be helpful and to be respectful to the role of a clinician and indeed to the situation of patients as well.
Taoiseach, please.
You're better than that, or at least I thought you were, because the reality of the situation is you're asking me as a politician to give a commitment to a child to have an operation regardless of whether a clinician believes that operation to be the best care pathway or not. That's what you're asking me to do. That's what you're asking me to do. No, Deputy, unless over the summer you became a surgeon, you're asking me to recommend clinical care pathways for an extraordinarily sick child. We're very happy for my team to talk to the family, very happy to help in every way we can, but ultimately a clinical decision will have to be made here. And for you to suggest that there's some clinical lever that I can pull that I just couldn't be bothered pulling is insulting to parents of sick children. You're better than that, and sick children deserve better than that.
Thank you very much.
It's playing politics with the issue.
He promised children the operations they need when he badly needed a win, and any old soundbite would do. And now that he has the highest office in the land, suddenly it's politicians do not order operations. I only played snippets of that exchange, but I would urge everyone to go and watch the full back and forth for yourselves to see exactly what kind of smug, smarmy, full of waffle soundbite machine Simon Harris is. Far more interested in taking pot shots than answering the questions. He made that promise in 2017 and now he washes his hands of it. And yet, he and his party have the gall to say they want to make Ireland the best country in Europe to be a child. But not for Harvey, I guess. Shameless. But let's move on to the Children's Hospital. Terrible location, a weak contract that has apparently allowed BAM to run wild, a black hole of public money, and still, no child has been treated in the hospital. And who signed off on it? Simon Harris. Simon Harris signed off and celebrated one of the biggest scandals this country has ever seen, and now the man is Taoiseach. Talk about failing upwards. This scandal should have ended Fine Gael's time in government, and it should have ended Simon Harris's political career. And yet here we are. Yes, he effectively brought down the last government, but Fine Gael somehow finagled their way back into power, and Simon Harris was returned as a TD. It just beggars belief. And now Soundbite Simon has the absolute cheek to tell us that the state won't be a pushover when it comes to the Children's Hospital. I nearly spat my morning coffee out when I read that headline. You and your government have allowed this absolute clusterfuck to continue year on year without any accountability. And what? Because there's an election around the corner, we're just to ignore all that and believe Simon bloody Harris of all people when he says that Ireland isn't going to be any sort of pushover in relation to any sort of additional claims or the likes. 2.2 billion euro and counting. 336,000 euro for a shite bike shelter for TDs. 19 million euro for spinal surgeries that was used far more broadly. 2.2 billion euro on a hospital for children besieged with issues and delays. All this waste. Since our government seem to have no problem wasting taxpayer money, I have an idea. Go find the top paediatric spinal surgeries in the world, pay them and their team whatever they want, fly them into Ireland, put them up in top accommodation and let them look after those children in dire need of surgeries. Are there more cost-effective ways of getting those children the care they need? Absolutely, but our government can't seem to manage it. So since we're spending the money anyway, at least direct it for something good. At least the suffering for those children would stop. And that is worth any price. The best country in Europe to be a child. You have to laugh because otherwise you'd cry. Another Fine Gael TD, Charlie Flanagan, recently posted on Twitter a screenshot of someone telling him to go f*** himself. And Charlie wrote, "If this is the new political discourse in Ireland, I'm glad I'm out." I hate to break it to Charlie here, but there's nothing new about this political discourse. Well, except that maybe the electorate are starting to return the favour by saying it back. Politicians routinely tell the electorate to go f*** themselves. They just don't explicitly say it. They say it through their actions. And that tweet and that phrase by his party is a massive middle finger and f*** you to the electorate. Fine Gael and Simon Harris are apparently up in the polls. I can only hope those polls are as reliable as the polls that proclaimed that the family and care referendums would pass easily. I refuse to believe that the haves outnumber the have-nots in this country, and I refuse to believe that our electorate would be so callous as to re-elect these charlatans who have caused and continue to cause so much misery for our country. I have to believe there is far more good in this country than not. Housing brought me to this YouTube dance. Housing is the defining issue for the millennial generation and indeed Gen Z. But the mistreatment of children by this government, and in particular the scoliosis and spina bifida surgery scandal, has become one of my biggest red lines. I cannot see how anyone in good conscience can vote for these uncaring wasters when they routinely allow children like Harvey Sharat to suffer needlessly. Children missing from Tusla, children being groomed and abused under the government's and Tusla's watch, ever-increasing waiting lists for children in need of interventions, care and supports, no school places for children who need school more than ever, ever-increasing child homelessness and deprivation in one of the supposedly richest countries in the world. It's enough to make you sick. The ever-increasing rising costs of the National Children's Hospital should once again bring down this government. But more than that, the spinal surgery scandal should not only bring down the government, but ensure that none of those self-serving, callously indifferent chancers ever get to leech off the public purse again. Fine Gael wants to make Ireland the best country in Europe to be a child. How f***ing dare they? So what do you think? Am I overreacting? Should I cut the government and Fine Gael some slack here? Are they really trying their best? Or is it just more sound bites from the party of callous inaction and wasteful action? Is this the Ireland we want? One where children are left in torturous agony while their parents are forced to watch, unable to help them? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe and hit that bell icon to be notified of new content. If you want to support the channel, you can buy me a coffee or a super thanks, which is greatly appreciated, and a huge thank you to those of you that already have. You can also follow me on Twitter. Until next time, Song of Full.